Welcome back to the Explainer. Okay, today we are literally stepping off the retail showroom floor, putting on our hard hats, and heading straight onto the factory floor to completely demystify manufacturing accounts. You know, if you've ever wondered how businesses actually figure out the true bottom line cost of making a product totally from scratch, well, you're in exactly the right place.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's just run through our factory tour agenda. We're looking at traders versus manufacturers, decoding direct costs, factoring in overheads, work in progress, the cost of production, and finally, apportioning shared costs. All right, let's get moving.
Up first, Section 1, Traders versus Manufacturers. So our journey starts right here on the loading dock. Now, a typical retail trader, they just log purchases of finished goods to stick on a shelf. But a manufacturer needs a whole new setup, the manufacturing account. And the reason is pretty simple. They don't just buy a finished product. They buy raw materials, hire the labor, run the machinery, and physically convert all of that into something brand new. So to figure out their actual cost of goods produced, they need a dedicated space in their accounting to track every single element of that creation process, long before it ever sees a sales tag.
Moving right along to Section 2, Decoding Direct Costs.
All right, stepping inside to the assembly line, we hit our absolute physical building blocks. A direct cost is 100% tied to the actual item being made. The ultimate litmus test here is this. If your production volume doubles tomorrow, do these costs double right alongside it? If it's a hard yes and you can trace that exact cost directly to the specific good rolling down the line, boom, you're looking at a direct cost.
Let's put this into perspective. Imagine a furniture maker. First up, you've got direct material. That's the physical wood you bought to build a chair. Step 2 is direct labor. That's the hourly wage paid specifically to the carpenter who is physically cutting and assembling that exact piece of wood. And Step 3 covers direct expenses, say a royalty fee you have to pay to a famous designer for every single chair you produce using their licensed blueprint.
Now, when you add up those materials, the direct labor, and those direct expenses, you arrive at the prime cost. This is a massive milestone in our manufacturing account. It's the foundational, primary expense that is undeniably directly attributable to manufacturing your product. Think of it this way. Without the prime cost, you literally do not have a product.
Okay, Section 3, Factoring in Overheads.
As we look around the factory floor, beyond just the carpenter and the wood, we see the big lights, the heavy machines, the floor supervisors. We obviously can't just ignore them. But here's the catch. You can't just attach a tiny fraction of the factory's monthly rent or the machinery's depreciation to one single chair. It's practically impossible, right? So we group these together as indirect factory overheads. These are usually fixed costs. They keep the factory running, they keep the lights on and the environment safe, but they support the entire production ecosystem rather than just one specific unit. Okay, let's do a quick mental check. Think about this. Which of these common factory floor expenses are direct costs, and which are factory overheads? Say, wages paid on a piece rate versus a floor supervisor's salary. Where do they go? And here is the perfect divide. If the cost physically makes the product, like buying raw materials or paying a worker strictly per piece they produce or paying royalties, that's direct. But if it just keeps the whole factory humming along, like the supervisor who watches the floor but doesn't actually build the chairs, the massive power bill, or the depreciation of the equipment, that is an indirect overhead. Keeping these two buckets crystal clear is absolutely crucial for accurate accounting.
Let's look at Section 4, Work in Progress. All right, picture this. It's the very last day of the financial year. The final buzzer rings, but there are still products sitting half-finished on the floor. Since these half-built chairs aren't finished goods yet, we have to adjust for them in the manufacturing account as Inventory of Work in Progress, or WIP. We've already spent money on the wood, we've paid for some labor, but we obviously can't sell half a chair. So we've got to account for the value of this unfinished inventory to make sure our production costs for the year are actually completely accurate.
Which brings us to Section 5, Cost of Production.
We've gathered all of our components, so it's time to actually do the math here. Step 1, you grab your prime cost. Step 2, you add in those factory overheads to get your total factory production costs. But wait, we're not quite done. For Step 3, you have to add in the opening work in progress. You know, those half-finished goods from last year that we finally wrapped up this year. And then, Step 4, you subtract the closing work in progress, the stuff we just started but haven't finished yet.
Let's look at Abraham's manufacturing as a real-world example of how this math works out. we can see $9,400 in raw materials consumed plus $1,000 in direct wages. That gives us a prime cost of $10,400. Then we add in $8,400 for factory overheads, and that brings us to the ultimate goal, the factory cost of production, landing exactly at $18,800. That right there is the true value of the goods Abraham successfully manufactured this year.
Finally, Section 6, apportioning shared costs.
For the final stop on our factory tour, we're actually stepping off the factory floor entirely and into the admin block to deal with shared bills. If the factory and the administrative office share one building, and more importantly, one electricity meter, we have to split that bill fairly between the manufacturing account and the general income statement. This whole process is called apportionment. We can't just dump the entire rent or power bill into factory overheads because, well, the office staff are sitting there using part of that resource too.
Let's look at Vasic Manufacturing to see how they handle this. They get hit with a $10,000 rent bill for the whole building. Now, because the factory takes up 2,000 square meters and the admin office only takes up 500, they split the bill based on floor area. It's a completely logical proportion. So 80% of it, or $8,000, gets slapped onto the factory overheads in the manufacturing account. The remaining 20%, the $2,000, goes straight to admin expenses in the income statement.
And here we are, the grand finale. All this incredibly hard work in the manufacturing account results in one vital number, the cost of production. Now, for a regular trader, their income statement relies on a simple purchases figure to find gross profit. But for our manufacturer, this highly detailed, meticulously calculated cost of production flows straight into the income statement, totally replacing the word purchases. It is the missing puzzle piece that allows the business to finally calculate its true gross profit.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to ponder for your own operations. If you're relying on percentages to split your shared bills, does how you slice that overhead pie actually change the reality of your factory's efficiency? Think about it. A tiny tweak in how you apportion rent or power could make your factory look either massively more or significantly less profitable on paper. Thanks for taking this factory tour with me, and as always, keep questioning the numbers.